The biting Texas wind swept across the desolate plains as Jake McCready rode his horse down the dusty road. His boots creaked against the stirrups, and his leather hat shielded his tired eyes from the dust dancing under the full moon. He had worked since dawn at the Morrison Ranch, breaking wild horses and mending fences broken by stubborn cattle. Dried sweat clung to his plaid shirt, and his aching muscles yearned for rest. When he spotted a small grove of oak trees near the dry creek bed, he decided to make his camp there. He lit a fire with dry branches, watching the flames dance against the star-filled sky. The silence was broken only by the crackling wood and the distant howl of coyotes. In that moment of solitude, Jake had no idea that his life was about to take a completely different turn, guided by the unpredictable fate of Texas nights. The flames cast dancing shadows when Jake heard hesitant footsteps approaching. A young woman emerged from the darkness, her blonde hair disheveled by the wind, and her arms crossed against the cold that cut through the Texas night. Emma Hartwell trembled visibly, her clothes inadequate for the harsh desert climate. She had gotten lost during an evening ride and had been wandering for hours looking for the way back to her father's property. Jake instinctively rose, removing his worn leather jacket. "Take my coat, the night is cold," he said in a hoarse voice, extending the garment still warm from his body. Emma hesitated for a moment, but the cold was stronger than her reserve. When the leather touched her shoulders, a different warmth began to spread between them, something that transcended simple protection from the weather. The fire crackled, a silent witness to that first encounter that would change everything. Sitting by the flames, Emma and Jake began to share stories they had kept for years. She spoke of the pressure of being the daughter of one of the region's most influential ranchers, always expected to exhibit exemplary behavior and arranged marriages. Jake revealed the loneliness of a life dedicated to horses and the vast expanses of land, where the only conversations were with animals and the wind. The Texas night enveloped them like a blanket, creating an unexpected intimacy. Emma discovered that behind the cowboy's rough exterior was a sensitive man, marked by family losses and abandoned dreams. Jake was surprised by the young woman's intelligence and determination, so different from the fragile women he had known. As the embers crackled, their fingers touched as they fed the fire together. In that moment, they both understood that something profound was being born, but they also knew that dawn would bring complications that could destroy that fragile and precious connection. The rising sun brought with it the cruel reality of the social differences that separated them. Emma was the daughter of Richard Hartwell, owner of the largest ranch in the region, while Jake was just a wandering cowboy without land of his own. Worse still, they discovered that years ago there had been a bitter dispute between Hartwell and Jake's former employer over grazing rights, resulting in lasting enmity. When Emma finally returned home, her overnight absence had already generated rumors in the small town of Cedar Creek. Suspicious glances and malicious whispers followed Jake through the dusty streets. Richard Hartwell soon discovered his daughter's encounter with the cowboy, and his fury echoed throughout the property. Emma was forbidden from going out alone, and Jake was warned by Hartwell's enforcers to keep his distance. But the fire that had been lit on that cold night would not be easily extinguished, and they both discovered that true love sometimes requires the courage to defy entrenched social conventions. The tension exploded one suffocating afternoon when Jake decided to look for Emma on the Hartwell property. Richard confronted him on the main porch, surrounded by his armed men, accusing him of dishonoring his family. Harsh words echoed across the dusty yard as Emma watched from the window, tears streaming down her face. Jake stood firm, hat in hand, explaining that his intentions were honorable and that he respected both Emma and her family. A crowd of ranch hands gathered to watch the confrontation, whispering bets on the outcome. Richard demanded that Jake leave the area immediately, threatening to use his influence to ruin any chance of work he might have. But Jake surprised everyone by publicly declaring his love for Emma, defying the social conventions that dictated that a landless cowboy could never aspire to the hand of a rancher's daughter. The heavy silence that followed was broken only by the hot wind sweeping dust across the yard, foreshadowing a decision that would change everyone's destiny. Weeks later, as tensions began to subside, Emma made a courageous decision that surprised the entire Cedar Creek community. She publicly renounced her paternal inheritance and declared her intention to build a life with Jake, regardless of the social consequences. Richard, initially furious, gradually recognized his daughter's unwavering determination and the sincerity of their love. Jake proved his worth by working tirelessly to buy a small piece of land, demonstrating that he could support Emma with dignity. The simple wedding at the local church brought together people from all social classes, symbolizing a shift in the rigid structures of the rural Texas community. During the ceremony, when Jake placed his coat over Emma's shoulders against the chill of the church, everyone remembered that first night around the campfire. And on that cold night, the fire was not the only thing to warm hearts hardened by the Texas desert, proving that true love can flourish in the most unexpected places and moments. The first months of marriage brought challenges that tested the young couple's determination. Jake and Emma settled in a small, hastily built wooden cabin on their modest property, a few miles from the Hartwell Ranch. Mornings began before dawn, with Jake tending to the cattle and Emma learning the domestic tasks her privileged upbringing had never required. Her delicate hands soon developed calluses from working in the garden and around the house. Neighbors watched with curiosity mixed with skepticism, doubting that the spoiled daughter of the wealthiest rancher could adapt to a simple life. Emma, however, surprised everyone with her resilience and determination. During the cold nights, when the wind howled through the ill-fitting planks, she and Jake warmed each other, recalling the campfire where it all began. The love that had been born under the Texas stars now strengthened through everyday difficulties, proving it was more solid than any adversity. The Texas winter arrived with unusual force, bringing ice storms that threatened to destroy the fragile stability Jake and Emma had built. Cattle began to die due to the extreme cold, and food reserves dwindled rapidly. Jake worked all day trying to protect the animals, returning to the cabin with frozen hands and a face marked by the icy wind. Emma prepared warm broths and kept the fire constantly lit, transforming their simple home into a welcoming refuge. When the situation became desperate, an unexpected surprise arrived one morning. Richard Hartwell appeared with a wagon loaded with supplies and hay for the cattle. The proud rancher had silently observed his daughter's struggle and recognized that Jake was a man of character. Without unnecessary words, he helped save the herd and left enough provisions to get them through the winter. That gesture marked the beginning of a slow but genuine reconciliation between the families that love had united against all social expectations. Spring brought renewal not only to the parched land, but also to the relationships that had been tested by time and adversity. Emma discovered she was expecting their first child, news that filled Jake with an uncontainable joy. The lonely cowboy who once roamed the plains was now preparing to be a father, building a crib with his own hands and expanding the cabin to accommodate their growing family. Richard Hartwell visited regularly, bringing gifts for his future grandchild and offering advice on raising cattle. The Cedar Creek community gradually accepted the couple, recognizing that their love had survived all obstacles imposed by social differences. Emma blossomed in pregnancy, her natural beauty enhanced by the genuine happiness she radiated. During warm afternoons, she and Jake sat on the makeshift porch, planning their future as they watched the sunset paint the Texas sky in golden hues. The modest ranch slowly prospered, a tangible symbol that hard work and true love could overcome any adversity imposed by fate. The birth of Thomas Jake McCready was celebrated throughout the region as a symbol of the union between two families that seemed destined for eternal rivalry. Emma faced childbirth with the same courage she had shown in defying social conventions, supported by Jake, who never left her side for a moment. The baby was born during a summer storm, as if nature itself wanted to mark that special moment. Richard Hartwell wept as he held his grandson for the first time, recognizing in the child's eyes the same determination he had admired in Emma. Jake watched his family with an emotion he had never experienced, finally understanding that that simple cabin held more wealth than any grand ranch. The first few months were challenging, with sleepless nights and increasing responsibilities, but every smile from the baby rewarded all the effort. Emma proved to be a natural mother, balancing the care of her son and ranch duties with a skill that impressed even the most experienced women in the region. The love that had begun on a cold night now multiplied, putting down deep roots in the Texas soil. 5 years passed, transforming the small McCready Ranch into a prosperous and respected property in the region. Thomas grew strong and healthy, riding alongside his father and learning the secrets of the land that Jake had mastered through years of experience. Emma gave birth to 2 more children, Mary, a girl with green eyes like her mother's, and Samuel, who inherited his father's quiet and observant nature. The original cabin had been replaced by a solid wooden house, with a wide porch where the family gathered at the end of each day. Richard Hartwell became a dedicated grandfather, visiting regularly and teaching his grandchildren stories about family and Texas traditions. Jake expanded the herd and acquired adjacent lands, proving that a determined man could build an empire even starting from nothing. During cold winter nights, as the family warmed themselves around the fireplace, Emma and Jake fondly recalled that first campfire where it all began. The leather coat he had offered that night still hung on a hook near the door, a permanent symbol of the love that had transformed 2 solitary lives into a united family. The summer of 1885 brought a devastating drought that once again tested the resilience of the Cedar Creek community. Rivers dried up, cattle died of thirst, and many ranchers lost everything. Jake and Richard worked together, combining resources and experience to drill artesian wells that saved not only their herds, but also those of less fortunate neighbors. Emma organized the women of the region to prepare meals for the workers and care for the children whose parents were fighting the drought. The McCready home became a center of hope and solidarity, where desperate families found support and encouragement. Thomas, now a 5-year-old boy, helped by distributing water to the smaller animals, learning early on the values of compassion and hard work. When the first rains finally arrived in the fall, the community celebrated in the streets of Cedar Creek, recognizing that it was their unity that had allowed for survival. Jake held Emma close as they watched the rain fall, whispering that the warmth of that first night had spread to warm an entire community, proving that true love has the power to transform not only individual lives, but the world around them. 10 years after that fateful night around the campfire, Jake McCready had become a respected figure in Cedar Creek, serving as a mediator in disputes between ranchers and being consulted on important community matters. His ranch prospered, employing dozens of workers and supplying quality cattle throughout the state of Texas. Emma had developed a reputation as a skilled midwife, assisting in the birth of virtually every child in the region in recent years. Their 3 children grew up healthy and well-educated. Thomas, at 15, already showed exceptional skill with horses. Mary, at 12, revealed talent for music and literature, while Samuel, at 10, showed interest in the family business. The original house had been expanded again, now including a library where Emma taught local children to read and write. Richard Hartwell, a proud grandfather, had officially named Jake as his successor in managing the combined family properties. On Sunday afternoons, when the entire family gathered on the porch for dinner, Jake observed his transformed life and whispered a prayer of gratitude for that cold night that had changed his destiny forever. The arrival of the railroad in Cedar Creek in 1892 brought progress and new challenges to the rural community. Jake saw an opportunity to expand his business, building corrals near the station to facilitate the transport of cattle to distant markets. Emma opened a small formal school on her property, serving children from families who did not have access to education. The town's transformation attracted adventurers and opportunists, some with dubious intentions that threatened the peace Jake and his family had helped build. Thomas, now a 20-year-old man, assumed increasing responsibilities on the ranch, demonstrating the same integrity and determination as his father. Mary, at 17, had become an educated and refined young woman, courted by suitors from several neighboring towns. Samuel, at 15, showed interest in studying engineering to help develop the region. The McCready family had become a pillar of the community, offering jobs, education, and stability. When investors from large cities tried to buy local land for paltry prices, it was Jake who organized the ranchers to negotiate together, protecting everyone's interests. The 19th century was drawing to a close when an unexpected tragedy shook the McCready family and the entire Cedar Creek community. Richard Hartwell, at 72, suffered a heart attack during a particularly violent storm, leaving Jake and Emma devastated by the loss of the patriarch who had become more than a father-in-law. He was a true father and mentor. The funeral gathered hundreds of people from across the state, a testament to the respect the rancher had earned throughout his life. Jake officially inherited the vast Hartwell properties, becoming one of the most influential men in rural Texas. Emma mourned the loss of the father, who had finally understood and blessed their love, remembering how he had arrived with supplies that harsh winter years ago. Thomas gradually took on more responsibilities, preparing to continue the family legacy. Mary married a young doctor who settled in Cedar Creek, while Samuel left to study in Austin, promising to return to modernize the ranch's operations. Even amidst the pain, Jake knew that Richard would approve of how the family had grown and prospered, upholding the values of honesty and hard work he had championed all his life. The turn of the century brought profound reflections on the extraordinary journey Jake and Emma had taken together. Sitting on the same porch where so many important decisions had been made, they watched their grandchildren play in the yard while recalling the moments that had defined their lives. Thomas had married the daughter of a local banker and presented the couple with two wonderful children. Mary lived happily with her doctor husband, contributing to the community's health and raising three intelligent and loving children. Samuel returned from Austin with modern knowledge of agriculture and livestock, implementing techniques that significantly increased the ranch's productivity. Emma, at 45, retained the serene beauty that had captivated Jake that first night, now enhanced by the wisdom and dignity of years well lived. Jake, now a mature and respected man, still felt the same thrill when she smiled at him. The leather coat he had offered on that cold night remained hanging at the entrance of the house, faded by time, but preserved as a sacred relic of their love. They knew they had built something far greater than a prosperous ranch. They had created a legacy of love, family, and community that would endure for generations. During a particularly cold winter night, similar to the one that had changed their lives decades ago, Jake and Emma decided to walk to the spot where they had first met. The grove of oak trees was still there, more mature and imposing, a silent witness to their love story. They lit a small campfire in the same spot, sitting close as the flames danced against the starry sky, exactly as on that distant night. Emma wore the same leather coat, now with a few patches but still functional and warm. Jake held her hands, now marked by years of hard work but still soft to his touch. They talked about their children, their grandchildren, the challenges overcome, and the dreams realized. The campfire's glow reflected in their eyes, showing that the fire of love that had been born there continued to burn with the same intensity. When Emma asked if he would do it all again in the same way, Jake smiled and replied that he would offer his coat 1,000 times, because that cold night had given him the greatest wealth a man could desire, a united family and an eternal love. The embers crackled as if in agreement, and the Texas wind carried their laughter across the endless plains, echoing through time as proof that some loves are destined to last forever. The dawn of the new century found Jake and Emma walking hand in hand back home, their footsteps leaving marks on the land that had witnessed their entire journey. The property stretching before them represented much more than financial success. It was the tangible result of decades of shared work, mutual sacrifice, and unwavering love. The lights from their house windows shone invitingly, promising the warmth of the family awaiting them for Sunday breakfast. Thomas was already in the yard tending to the horses, perpetuating the traditions his father had taught him. Mary prepared pancakes in the kitchen, while her children ran through the house, filling it with laughter and joy. Samuel checked the modern equipment he had installed, always looking for ways to improve the efficiency of the family ranch. Jake paused for a moment to contemplate the scene, realizing that that cold night so many years ago had not just been the beginning of a romance, but the first chapter of a family saga that would continue for generations. Emma squeezed his hand and whispered that the warmth of that first campfire had spread through time, warming not only their hearts, but an entire lineage of descendants who would carry forward the values of love, work, and family they had planted in the Texas soil. The years of World War I brought unexpected challenges for the McCready family and the entire Cedar Creek community. Samuel, now 32, voluntarily enlisted in the army, leaving Emma devastated and Jake proud of his son's courage. Thomas fully took over the management of the expanded ranch, proving to be a natural leader, capable of maintaining prosperity even during difficult times. Mary organized groups of women to send supplies to soldiers, transforming her home into a center for war support. Jake, at 55, felt the weight of responsibility to maintain the region's stability, while young men left to fight in distant lands. Emma dedicated herself to comforting mothers who had lost sons in the conflict, offering her home as a refuge for those who needed emotional support. During the long nights of waiting for news of Samuel, the couple gathered around the fireplace, remembering how their own story had begun in a time of uncertainty. The leather coat hanging on the wall seemed to symbolize the protection they wished to extend to their distant son, and both prayed for him to return safe and sound to continue the family legacy they had worked so hard to build. Samuel's return in 1919 was celebrated throughout Cedar Creek as a symbol of hope and renewal after the dark years of the war. He came back changed by the experience, more mature and determined to apply knowledge gained during the conflict to further modernize the family's operations. Jake watched with admiration as his youngest son had become a man of vision, proposing infrastructure improvements and establishing commercial partnerships with other regions of the country. Emma organized a welcome home party that gathered hundreds of people, transforming the ranch into a celebration of gratitude and family unity. Thomas embraced his brother with tears in his eyes, relieved to have his companion and business advisor back. Mary prepared all of Samuel's favorite dishes, while her children could barely contain their excitement at reuniting with their hero uncle. During the family gathering that night, Samuel recounted war stories that alternated between tragedy and hope, always emphasizing how the lessons of honor and perseverance learned at home had been his strength in the most difficult moments. Jake held Emma's hand, both realizing that they had raised children capable of facing any adversity while maintaining their principles intact, a direct result of the solid love that had served as the foundation for the entire family. The 1920s marked the peak of prosperity for the McCready family business, with the ranch becoming one of the most modern and profitable agricultural and livestock operations in all of Texas. Samuel implemented revolutionary farming techniques that tripled production, while Thomas expanded cattle breeding to include specialized breeds that fetched premium prices in national markets. Jake, now recognized as a respected patriarch, served on the Cedar Creek Town Council and frequently received visits from important politicians and businessmen. Emma established the town's first public library, donating hundreds of books and organizing educational programs for adults. The original property had been transformed into a true model farm with paved roads, modern irrigation systems, and facilities that impressed visitors from across the country. Mary and her doctor husband built the region's first hospital on a portion of the family lands, offering free medical care to needy families. The grandchildren grew up amidst this prosperity, but always remembering the stories of humility and hard work their grandparents told. During Sunday gatherings, when 3 generations sat at the table, Jake contemplated his numerous and prosperous family, marveling at the journey that had begun with a simple act of kindness on a cold night. The stock market crash of 1929 and the subsequent Great Depression once again tested the McCready family's resilience, but found them prepared due to their solid values and intelligent business diversification. While many ranchers lost their properties, Jake had taught his children the importance of maintaining financial reserves and investing in different sectors of the economy. Thomas led efforts to create agricultural cooperatives that helped small producers survive the economic crisis. Samuel used his technical knowledge to develop more efficient production methods that reduced costs without compromising quality. Emma organized social assistance programs, distributing food and clothing to unemployed families who arrived in Cedar Creek seeking opportunities. The McCready Ranch became a center of economic stability, offering jobs when other businesses closed their doors. Mary coordinated fundraising campaigns to keep the hospital running even without payment from many patients. The family voluntarily decided to reduce their standard of living to be able to help more people, demonstrating that true prosperity was measured not only by accumulated wealth, but by the ability to share and support the community during difficult times. Jake was proud to see how the values planted on that distant night had blossomed into a generation committed to social justice and community responsibility. During the harshest years of the Depression, Jake and Emma, now in their 60s, decided to formalize a tradition that had begun informally. Every particularly cold winter night, they would light a large bonfire in the farmyard and invite anyone in need to warm themselves and receive a hot meal. The tradition became known as Coat Nights, in reference to the family story everyone in the region knew. Hundreds of migrant workers, homeless families, and young people seeking opportunities found not only temporary shelter, but also hope and restored dignity. Thomas and Samuel organized a system where they offered temporary work in exchange for food and accommodation, allowing people to maintain their self-esteem while receiving help. Emma prepared enormous cauldrons of soup and taught unemployed women to sew, creating a source of income for them. Mary used these gatherings to offer basic medical care and health education. Coat Nights became legendary throughout Texas, with people traveling hundreds of miles to experience the McCready family's hospitality. Jake observed these scenes with deep emotion, realizing that the warmth shared on that first night had multiplied infinitely, creating a current of goodness that extended far beyond the limits of their property and would continue to influence lives for future generations. As the 1930s drew to a close and the United States began to recover economically, Jake McCready, at 70, decided to write his memoirs to preserve the family's history for future generations. Sitting in his library, with Emma by his side helping him recall details, he began with the phrase that had changed everything: "Take my coat, the night is cold." The pages describe not only his personal journey from lonely cowboy to respected patriarch, but also Cedar Creek's transformation from a small settlement to a prosperous town. Samuel typed the manuscripts on a modern typewriter, while Thomas organized photographs and historical documents to illustrate the memoirs. Mary contributed her own childhood memories, adding perspectives on how growing up in a family built on genuine love had influenced her worldview. The teenage grandchildren listened fascinated to stories about great-grandfather Richard, the arrival of the railroad, the challenges of war, and the Depression. The book, titled The Warmth of the Campfire, A Texas Saga, would be published years later and become required reading in local schools. As he wrote the final lines, Jake reflected that his life had been extraordinary not for grand heroic deeds, but for small acts of kindness that generated immeasurable consequences, proving that true love possesses transformative power that transcends time and circumstances.